All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, MBs, we have Jessica Cisneros, who is running in Texas 28, running against Henry Cuellar. We already showed her campaign video real quick. She's young, she's progressive. I think AOC recently endorsed you, right? Or even before?
Yeah, this cycle and last cycle as well. There's been so many awesome, folks supporting our campaign, and we're really grateful for that.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your background before we get into, what's going on in Texas right now and your race. So what how did you get your start in politics?
Well, I decided to run. Henry Cuellar, my opponent, had been in office at that time for 16 years in Congress. He's actually been in office longer than I've been alive at one capacity or another. Before he ran for Congress, he was the state rep for Laredo, and then he left that seat to be Rick Perry, Secretary of State. And then he decided to run for Congress, and he actually got to Congress by primarying another sitting congressman. So he likes to pretend like that's not how he got his start, by doing what we're doing too. And I decided to run because no one was really stepping up against him. Justice Democrats was recruiting, trying to find someone, working with local folks here. But I decided ultimately to do it when I was approached to and was asked to run because that time, Henry Cuellar was voting with Donald Trump 70% of the time. I mean, he had voted to fund the border wall twice. He had an A rating from the NRA. He was getting a lot of money from the private prison industry, and a lot of bad guys, including the Koch brothers and big oil. And I felt, especially at that time, as I became an immigration attorney under the Trump administration, specifically representing people in immigration court who are detained in the private prisons, because they were just not born in this country. And I took a leap of faith. I mean, it was honestly scary to do so because I was 26 at the time. But I knew my community was going to respond, and they were going to take that leap of faith with me. And we, ran a great campaign that first time around. I was a 26-year-old first-time challenger, and we came within 3 percentage points of defeating Cuellar. So now we're back to finish the job.
Absolutely. So you also, I don't know if you like talking about this or not, but you were an intern for Henry Cuellar.
Yeah, I was an intern back in 2014. So I mentioned I became an immigration attorney under the Trump administration. But before then, I had been doing immigration advocacy work since 2012. That was when DACA had been first announced. So it was a really exciting time, especially for my undocumented loved ones, because they had some kind of safety, and protection. And the exciting part at that time was that people were talking about immigration reform, like it was going to happen. There was like a push on the Senate side, to put forth a bill for to create a pathway to citizenship. So I was an undergrad at that time, and I told myself I wanted to have a front row seat to watch that happen. Like I wanted to see immigration reform come out of both chambers and get signed into law. So when I got this fellowship, they told me you can apply anywhere you want to. And I was like, well, I think I want to intern for my congressman because I want whatever work I do in Washington to directly benefit the people back home. So I decided to do it. And I think a lot about that experience for two reasons. First one was that it took me, a constituent, having to be in that office to actually find out the kind of terrible representation that we were receiving. I mentioned a few of the terrible things that Henry Cuellar has done to side with Republicans, but that's also when I realized that he was anti-choice. I mean, he had been voting to defund Planned Parenthood and continued supporting the Hyde Amendment. I found out that he was anti-labor and anti-worker, that he really ditched working people and sided with Republicans. He Not at that time, but most recently, he was the only Democrat to vote twice against the PRO Act. He was taking all this money from corporate special interests and lobbyists. The people that I saw walk into the office weren't families like mine visiting from the district. It was lobbyist after lobbyist after lobbyist. And it was a formative experience, I guess, to say the least. I think the thing that shocked me the most was that when he was talking about immigration reform, it didn't really include a pathway to citizenship for people. It was going to create like a second here, I guess, residency for many people. And I just knew that those weren't the values of people here in the district.
Yeah, and not
Second thing
only
that
that, but also unpopular. Really, I mean, this
oh,
is
absolutely.
in a lot of instances a thing I find myself asking is like, who are conservatives doing this for when there is no constituency for it? Obviously, this dovetails perfectly into the second thing that we're going to talk about, Roe v. Wade. But yeah, I mean, offering a pathway citizenship to DACA recipients and undocumented immigrants that have been living on U.S. soil for an extended period of time across the board is a broadly popular concept. I mean, even Reagan offered amnesty at a certain point. Like
Yeah.
this is something that Americans, even Republicans, do not have that large of an issue with and are overall supportive, especially when it comes to DACA recipients, which is 90% approval.
You're
That's
absolutely
crazy.
right. I mean, my parents were able to get their shot at the American dream during the Reagan administration. They were beneficiaries of the 1986 immigration reform. So I've seen the impact that policies like that have on families like mine and families here in this district. So that's why it was just eye-opening and shocking that, again, it took me having to be there in his office to realize what kind of representation we were receiving. The second thing that I did learn while I was there was that I looked into the congressional offices and I saw a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds running Washington, right? Like young people are the ones that are pushing and shaping policy. So, I mean, it really inspired me to go ahead and just, like I said, take that leap of faith and run. Like young people can definitely have a role in the forefront of creating better policy for our country.
Yeah. So what is your pathway to success? I mean, you've seen a lot of success so far in your district. This unfortunately went into a runoff, but I mean, you got very, very close to defeating him in without a runoff as well. So, I guess the question I have is, Cuellar is making a bet that his district is more conservative than it actually is, and obviously you are presenting a new face for politics, and you are also uh, obviously much more progressive, significantly more progressive than especially the most conservative Democrat in Congress. Um, do you feel like you have a different turnout strategy that revolves around demographics that normally go unheard or whose issues are unaddressed? What is your plan
I mean,
there?
I think, well, this runoff election, the dynamics are a little bit different because this is we made history on March 1st, pushing this runoff to begin with. So this is like the first runoff in the history of the congressional district. We came within 1 percentage point of being the top vote getter and defeating Cuellar. But that also means that people aren't used to voting for Congress in May, which is when the runoff is happening, right? On May
Hmm.
24th. So the biggest obstacle that we have in this election, and one of the reasons why, if you're watching this, I really hope you take, a bit to support us, whether that means a donation or helping us with our phone banks. We need to let people know that this election is happening and that change is on the ballot and that we can kick out Henry Cuellar. So it's really going to come down to voter turnout. We've been running on the same issues that we did last cycle, which is healthcare and jobs. I mean, surprise, those are issues that are important to people. Like we've been pushing on, Medicare for all and what that would mean for families here in South Texas, what a $15 minimum wage would mean here in Texas, because our minimum wage is still $7.25. But we also have to meet people where they are at, right? A lot of folks, I think the primary feeling that we were getting at the doors when we first launched our campaign last cycle was people feeling like they were being taken for granted. So for us, I mean, a huge, I guess, lift that we've been doing is trying to meet voters where they are and inspire them to be a part of this election and be a part of this campaign. And it's our district is pretty big. It's one of those beautifully gerrymandered districts, as you can imagine, here in Texas. And it's almost the same size as the state of New Jersey. So we have a lot of ground to cover, a lot of voters to, reach. So if y'all can help us out, it'd be really appreciated. We have 19 days to go, and we have a lot of work ahead over these next few days.
No, absolutely. And there are people in your district that are in my chat right now, and they're very excited.
Yeah.
Before we get into how they can help, though, there's some other stuff that I want to talk about, specifically Roe v. Wade. Now, obviously, the leaked Alito draft, for those of you who already know this, is has shown us that the final project of the Federal Society is coming to fruition, and the United States Supreme Court is going to overturn Roe v. Wade, which will, of course, in a series of landmark decisions and trigger laws that are going to activate immediately, and pre-existing laws like those in Texas are going to make it illegal for women and those who can give birth to seek out abortions, which is a medical procedure. And Henry Cuellar is pro-life. He is in support of the Roe v. Wade decision being overturned, right?
Yeah, that's right. So last fall, shortly after we had announced our second run for Congress, the Texas legislature last summer had passed SB 8, and it was implemented in the fall, a few weeks after we had announced our second run. And because of the Texas abortion ban being put into effect, that's when Congress took up, the House took up the vote on the Women's Health Protection Act, and Henry Cuellar was the only Democrat to side with Republicans against codifying Roe v. Wade. He's been doubling down on his anti-choice stance, and
when he doesn't even need to.
Something that we've been trying to hammer. Right, he didn't even have to do that, but he's been doubling down on his anti-choice stance, and I guess an effort to appeal to Republicans. And he's just been an obstacle, not just on this, but so many other key Democratic legislation, including, for example, Build Back Better. He was one of the ones that was leading the charge on trying to water down and successfully stop the passage of the bill. So
to stop you real quick there, sorry. What are the direct implications of like not being able to push for Build Back Better in your district specifically? Like, what are the immediate tangible impacts of something like that in the form of like funding? I assume you have infrastructure problems, as does everywhere else in America. But could you go into a little bit of detail on that?
Yeah, well, one of the infrastructure problems that I don't think is common in many places, there are some places in America, we didn't have running water for some time here in Laredo. Like during the primary, during early vote, in the March 1st primary election, there were like 5 days that I didn't have water at home. Like I had to go and shower other places because we just have such a severe lack of infrastructure here. But of course, expanding healthcare, especially in an area like South Texas, where we're so medically underinvested, that would have gone such a long way. Here in our district, we have a 30% poverty rate. There's about 1 in 4 people that don't have health insurance, and this were numbers before the pandemic. So I'm sure with people getting laid off during the pandemic, it's much, much higher. People here have to go to Mexico to be able to have a chance at affording healthcare because it's just so much cheaper over there. So even something such as an expansion on the services that Medicare covers to dental, vision, hearing, that would have gone such a long way for people here. But unfortunately, I guess Henry Cuellar doesn't want our seniors to have hearing aids.
Okay, that's not surprising for how establishment Democrats or blue dog Democrats, should not even exist in my opinion, operate. And he is actually, despite all of this, getting a lot of support from not the people in your district, but rather the establishment Democrats and those in the party that have a profound amount of influence, sway, and power. Nancy Pelosi, despite asking me for money all the goddamn time, is especially in this new abortion fight. And women's choice fight that now we have to battle is still very much in support of your opponent, if I'm not mistaken. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I think right now, like people need to understand, including electeds and especially Democratic leadership, that this isn't a drill. Like these are fundamental freedoms on the line, and we can't have someone like Henry Cuellar all of a sudden becoming the Joe Manchin of the House and just an obstacle in our fight to preserve and protect these freedoms, because he could very well be the deciding vote on the future of reproductive rights in this country.
Absolutely.
We can't risk that.
And you had Jim Clyburn visit your district as well yesterday, and speak to, I would consider to be not that sizable of a crowd. I think like around 80 people showed up to that. Not a big, not a big crowd winner, Jim Clyburn is, but how does that make you feel that like the party is not only, I mean, do you sense a little bit of hypocrisy there? I feel like when the National Democratic Party is saying one thing, but then when it comes down to it, and when it comes down to actually supporting a young progressive woman who is pro-choice, they end up siding with the anti-choice old establishment Democrat who is openly conservative to a degree that he doesn't even have to be.
I really want them to know, like, well, first off, I would be a much better partner, of course, in getting a lot of these democratic priorities and promises that Democrats made on the campaign trail last cycle, right? Like, these are issues that Democrats have been running on, not just last cycle, but also during these elections as well. And it just doesn't make sense that they're supporting someone who has been a constant obstacle in delivering for people that voted them into office. So for me, it's just like I'm ready to work. And Henry Cuellar obviously is not. Like he's been throwing our community under the bus and hurting the entire country in the process. And again, this isn't a drill. Like this is it. Like Henry Cuellar has had a huge role in eroding our fundamental freedoms. And we have a chance right now on May 24th to kick him out and send a strong message that even here in South Texas, where people like to put on this label that really doesn't make sense because people here, when we have conversations with them, they absolutely are pro-choice, but nobody's been driving that conversation here, and we are. And we want to make sure that we're sending a resounding message that choice and so many other issues that working people prioritize, like increasing the minimum wage, like having healthcare through Medicare for all, like all of these are issues that matter to us. And we can win in this district and send that resounding message all across the country and basically set the tone for these midterm elections.
Okay, that's awesome. I have so you brought up what you need from at least my community as well. Like, and I want to help out in any way I can. I think you're awesome. I think you're dope. Before I ask you what kind of message you have for young people that also want to get involved in politics, what can we do in this circumstance, in this immediate future leading up to your election, which is happening very soon?
Yeah. Well, before I get there, I just want to give y'all, all of your community and you yourself, a shout out for supporting Frontera Fund. It's an abortion fund that does work here in South Texas and covers part of our district. So thank you so much for supporting us because we really do need all the support that we can get here in Texas and especially South Texas. And the other request that I have is if y'all can help us out in these final days. We have 19 days to go before this election on May 24th. We need, donations. We need volunteers. We need people power in both forms. And if you're here in this district, we need you to vote for change. We need you to reach out to our campaign. Tell us all the people that you know that are going to be or are eligible to vote so that we can work together to make sure that they get to the polls. But we also need you knocking on doors and jumping on our phone banks and chipping in what you can. Like we need all hands on deck right now. We need all the support that we can get.
What are some good things that people can say in the given the nature of the race currently? Because I mean, as someone who's like done door knocking during primaries for Bernie Sanders, one of the things that I always had a hard time grasping was trying to get people more involved, like working class people that have their 9 to 5s that are not even interested in actually voting in the general election, let alone where an election where they actually might have more impact than they think, like the primaries. And this is, like you already mentioned, happening at a unique time. What are some things that we could, people could immediately say, try to get people involved? What have you seen that's been successful?
So usually people, there's many people who are incredibly busy, right? And also part of the problem why they don't want to get engaged is because they feel left out of the process or that, politicians, no matter, when they get into office, like they tend to be the same old people like Henry Cuellar. the most powerful thing that people can do is talk about why this election is so important for them. One of the things that we do whenever we have our canvases and we get ready and we get trained is talk about why we decided to show up in the first place. Because I think that storytelling and not just talking about theory and policy in an abstract sense, but how it affects you really does go a long way. So I don't, we each have our reasons why. And I think having those, I guess, that human touch of talking to people and seeing them and hearing them and validating a lot of the struggles and challenges that they're facing, that's probably the best thing you can do to get someone inspired to get out and vote and activate them and be a part of the campaign as well.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about I mean, we were supposed to play Mario Kart, but I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that. I'm gonna be honest. I feel like, I mean, we can set that up at a different time.
I was kidding about that. But that's actually one of the things that I do after I'm done with campaigning for the day. It's been long hours, and just to like de-stress, I've been playing a lot of Mario Kart, Mario Party, and Breath of the Wild. So I usually turn to my Switch.
Especially Breath of the Wild is good. It's incredible. It's an incredible game. Switch is. I'm 30. I didn't have a Switch until, like, I guess a year and a half ago, and oh my God, it's a game changer for me specifically. I don't know. It's awesome. Okay. So we talked about Henry Cuellar. We talked about the establishment Democrats. Is there anything that you specifically want to address that I haven't gotten to?
I think we covered a lot. Stressing the fact that like we have so much work to do in the next 19 days. And just, I think for me, how grateful I am to have the support of so many people, both inside and outside of the district, because I said it from the very beginning, like I cannot do this alone. But the reason why I decided to get in is because I knew exactly that I was not going to do this alone. So even if it feels that, making one phone call or, chipping in whatever you can, like all of those things, like that is how we win elections. Just continuing to make phone calls, continuing to knock on doors, giving what you can give, getting others to do the same. It's not glamorous, it's not glitzy, it's just rolling up our sleeves and like doing the hard work. Like that's what people do in this district every day. And I remember when I decided to run the first time around, there were a lot of naysayers, of course, a lot of people being like, how are you going to take on this powerful man? Are you sure you can do this? And I said yes, because I pride myself on having an ear to the ground, because we're out there putting in the work and talking to people and hearing from them directly that they need change. And I've seen people in this district do the impossible every single day. And that's what we're going to do on May 24th. Like, we're going to win this, despite everything that people have been saying, or despite, so many folks, powerful people behind Henry Cuellar. We also have powerful people behind this campaign too.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was wonderful, and I mean, I'm really excited to see what happens in this election. I think you got this in the bag, but I don't want to jinx it. Okay, it is still.
No, we can't take anything for granted.
Yes,
that's why.
Absolutely not. And also, there's still a lot of work to be done in this process, and I hope that all of you in the chat, if you're in Texas, if you're in South Texas specifically, like, go and help out, get the door knocking, get the phone calling and phone banking. We need more progressive members in Congress. So it's great. I'm so glad you came on. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Take care. Bye, y'all.
All right. Bye.